He grabbed her. Cal right out of her hands, an admiral, 3 stars on his shoulder, daring her to prove she even deserved to stand in that room. For a sniper, that's the one rule you never break: touch another's rifle and it's war. What followed wasn't just defiance, it was 60 seconds, 6 targets, and one impossible record that would flip an entire base upside down. But here's the twist: that wasn't even the real test, because minutes later, the same woman would be forced into a live mission where every shot wasn't for pride, it was for survival. Who was she? Why did her rifle shine red against the dust? And how did humiliation turn into the most shocking display of skill anyone had ever seen? Stick around, because what you're about to hear will change the way you think about power, respect, and silence. And before we dive in, hit subscribe and ring the bell for a simple woman, so you never miss the stories they tried to erase from history. The Admiral's hand closed around the crimson rifle before anyone even realized what was happening. 3 stars on his collar, a smirk carved into his face, and the weight of absolute authority behind the motion. But the Barrett M107A1 was not his to take. Staff Sergeant Aria Volk's fingers clamped down on the barrel, her voice low and sharp as a blade. "Hands off my rifle." Gasps cracked across the briefing room. Soldiers froze, eyes wide, waiting for one of them to relent. But Rourke yanked harder, testing her grip, and for a single dangerous heartbeat it looked like he might rip it free. Then Aria moved. A twist of her shoulder, a snap of her wrist, and the Admiral stumbled back, forced to catch himself as if a wave had hit him. For the first time in years, his authority had slipped in front of an entire command. "You just made a mistake," Rourke growled, nursing his wrist. His voice carried like thunder, daring anyone to disagree. 6 shots, 6 targets, 60 seconds. Range out to 1,800 meters. Miss one, and you're finished. Career over. The room held its breath. Captain Jonah Pierce shifted uncomfortably at the side, caught between protecting his sergeant and defying his superior. Mira Cho, Aria's spotter, scribbled furiously in her notebook, already calculating the odds. Young Lieutenant Harrow fumbled for his stopwatch, lips trembling with both fear and anticipation. Aria didn't answer. She simply slung the Barrett against her shoulder and walked toward the door. Silence parted before her like a tide. Minutes later, the desert sun hammered down on the firing line. The air shimmered with heat, the wind curling in sharp, unpredictable gusts. 6 steel silhouettes gleamed against the sand at impossible distances: 800, 1,000, 1,200, 1,450, 1,600, and 1,810 meters. Soldiers clustered along the berm, muttering, some smirking, others whispering prayers. "Shooter ready?" Harrow called, his voice cracking as he raised the stopwatch. Aria lowered into prone position, her cheek pressed against the stock. Mira crouched at her side, murmuring wind calls. Rourke stood behind them, arms folded, eyes burning with challenge. "Begin." The Barrett roared. The first plate at 800 meters rang instantly. Ping. Aria worked the bolt with smooth precision, already shifting. The second shot cracked. Ping. The 1,000-meter silhouette toppled. At 20 seconds, the 1,200-meter plate echoed. Ping! The murmurs in the crowd sharpened into disbelief. Rourke's jaw tightened. The 4th target danced in the mirage at 1,450 meters, wind tearing left to right. Mira whispered corrections, and Aria exhaled slowly. Ping! Steel sang again. 35 seconds gone, 2 targets left. Dust swirled around the 1,600-meter silhouette, devils twisting the air. Aria's eyes narrowed, her breathing slowed into an almost unnatural rhythm. Inhale, pause, release. The Barrett thundered. Ping! The plate shuddered. 47 seconds, 1 left. The last silhouette crouched at 1,810 meters, barely visible in the haze. The wind howled, shifting violently. Mira's voice rose, urgent. "Hold right, half mil, no more." Time bled away. 10 seconds, Harrow shouted. Rourke's lips curled, waiting for the failure. Aria flipped open the small notebook taped to her rifle case. Faded words her grandfather's hand stared back at her. "Every shot is a door. Open it for someone else." Her eyes locked on the rock beside the target, not the target itself. 5 seconds, she squeezed. The bullet skipped off the stone, ricocheted, and slammed into the steel silhouette dead center. Ping. 60 seconds. 6 shots, 6 hits. Silence crushed the crowd. No cheers, no gasps. Only stunned stillness as the impossible burned into their eyes. Rourke's face drained of color. He had tried to humiliate her. Instead, he had armed her with legend. Aria rose, crimson rifle against her chest. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke louder than any words. "Hands off my rifle." The steel plates still shivered from Aria's last shot when the comms crackled with static. It wasn't the usual background hiss, it was sharp, invasive, like claws on glass. A few soldiers clapped their hands over their headsets, wincing. Captain Pierce frowned, tapping his earpiece. "What the hell?" The duty officer rushed forward, pale. "Sir, we're getting interference across all channels. Range sensors just spiked out of calibration. Wind data scrambled." Rourke's eyes narrowed, voice cutting through the noise. "Interference from where?" The officer hesitated, then swallowed hard. "It's Spectre 12, sir. Signals triangulated from the ridge beyond the valley. They're jamming." A ripple of unease spread through the crowd. Spectre 12 was a ghost name, whispered among units, an enemy cell specializing in electronic warfare, known for crippling targeting systems and making entire squads fight blind. Rourke's jaw tightened. "And we let them listen while we play games?" His glare shifted to Aria. "Fine. You want to keep proving yourself? Then prove it without your toys." The range staff scrambled to recalibrate, but Mira Cho was already checking her notebook, scrawling quick comparisons. She frowned, the pen tapping fast against the page. "Aria," she whispered, leaning close. "The anemometer's gone. Sensors are lying. They're off by 2 whole mils. If you trust the data, you'll miss every shot." Aria's cheek pressed tighter against the stock. She had already guessed. The flags weren't matching the readouts. The mirage on the horizon shifted wrong. She didn't lift her head, but her voice was low. "So we trust eyes." Mira nodded, adrenaline sparking. Back to the basics, wind call by sight. She flipped a fresh page, sketching the curls of dust devils and the flag angles. Cross grain at 1.2 mils for 1400. More than the chart says, a lot more. Lieutenant Harrow looked up from his stopwatch, confused. "But if the machines are wrong, how do you—" "Shut up and watch," Mira snapped, eyes still on the range. Rourke folded his arms. "She'll choke. The myth dies here." The next target was reset at 1,400 meters. The wind cut across the valley in brutal sheets, snapping the flag hard left, then letting it sag before jerking right again. The heat haze made the plate dance, mocking precision. Aria's breathing slowed. Inhale, hold, release. Her eyes read the ground instead of the numbers, the spirals of dust, the way the mirage tilted like waves. She wasn't calculating anymore. She was listening, the way her grandfather had taught her on hunting ridges back home. She squeezed. The Barrett cracked, echoing into the storm of interference. A half-second later, steel rang, ping. The crowd jolted. Even Pierce exhaled in relief. Harrow's pen slipped from his hand. Rourke's face stayed stone, but a muscle ticked at his jaw. "Next plate," Mira said quickly, scanning the air. She pointed at a gust curling through the valley. 3 mils right. "Don't trust the flag, it's lying." Aria adjusted without hesitation. Crack, ping. Mira grinned, triumphant. "That's 2. Now murmurs surged in the crowd. Soldiers exchanged looks, some nodding, some whispering disbelief. The legend wasn't luck, it was repeatable. But the interference spiked again, static clawing at every headset. A few screens blinked and died outright, leaving officers blind to telemetry. Rourke barked at the texts, but Aria ignored it all. The fifth plate shimmered at 1,600 meters. The valley wind howled like a predator, tearing flags nearly sideways. Mira called quick corrections, eyes locked on the dust funnel curling between berms. Half mil high, 1.5 right. Now, Aria fired. Ping. Cheers erupted before being strangled back into silence, as if no one dared to celebrate openly under the Admiral's gaze. The sixth and final silhouette stood at 1,800 again. The gusts screamed harder now, pulling sand into blinding sheets. Mira hesitated, sweat beading. "Aria, this isn't stable. There's no clean window. You'll have to feel it." Aria shifted, eyes narrowing. Her breathing turned ragged for a moment, then steadied into the strange cadence of Aurora. Inhale, constrict, exhale, long and trembling. Her vision tunneled, locking on the plate through the storm. The Barrett roared, a heartbeat. 2, 3, ping, the plate rocked, dead center. This time the silence didn't hold. A shout burst from the back, a soldier clapping his helmet in disbelief. Others muttered curses of awe. Even Pierce let out a laugh of relief, shaking his head. Mira grinned fiercely, scribbling the result into her notebook. 6 for 6, by sight, no sensors, no lies. Aria rolled to her side, pale, sweat streaking down her face. Her hands trembled faintly, but she cradled the crimson rifle like a lifeline. Rourke's stare bored into her, cold and furious, but beneath it, for the first time, there was something else. Not just disdain, something closer to recognition and fear. Aria didn't meet his eyes. She looked at the targets shimmering in the haze, then at the notebook where her grandfather's words lay scrawled in fading pencil. "Every shot is a door." And in the silence that followed, everyone watching knew she had opened one that couldn't be closed again. The valley should have calmed after 6 clean hits, but nature had other plans. A cold front swept across the ridge, colliding with the desert heat. Suddenly the flags no longer danced in rhythm. They snapped violently in opposite directions, one bending left, another jerking right, as if the air itself was split in two. The range techs stared at their dead screens, helpless. "Wind shear," one muttered, 2 layers cutting against each other. "You can't shoot through that." Rourke heard it, and his mouth twisted into a grim smile. "Then we'll see what's myth and what's flesh." He raised his voice for all to hear. "New trial, 5,000 meters, cross-shear conditions. Let's end this farce." Gasps ran through the soldiers. 5,000 was the territory of legends, whispered in stories about Canadian and British sharpshooters, who had spent entire careers chasing such shots. Nobody expected a clean hit in conditions like this. Nobody dared try. Aria lay prone again, crimson rifle steady, but her arms felt heavier than before. The last string of shots had drained her more than she showed. Mira crouched at her side, eyes wide with worry. "Aria, this isn't stable. Even if you calculate both layers, they'll never sink. You'll miss." Aria didn't answer. She adjusted her sling, then pulled the small notebook closer. On one page, scribbles of her grandfather's equations looped like music, symbols most would dismiss as nonsense. She drew a new line, a shallow curve that bent back on itself. Mira caught her breath. "You're not Aria. That's the Aurora pattern. That'll wreck you." But Aria was already breathing in the strange rhythm. Not steady, not calm. This was different. She inhaled deep, then locked her chest, forcing the air to compress until her veins throbbed in her temples. She exhaled in a trembling release, then repeated, sinking her body not to stillness but to chaos. Through the scope, the target blurred, wavered, then seemed to lock into place as her vision tunneled. She pressed the trigger. The Barrett bucked against her shoulder. Spotters scrambled, eyes wide as the bullet disappeared into the distortion. A long moment passed before the faint clang echoed back. Ping, direct center. The range erupted in disbelief. Soldiers shouted, some cheering, others cursing, unable to process what they'd just seen. One sergeant dropped his helmet in the dirt, shaking his head. "That's impossible." She aimed into nothing. But Aria didn't rise. She stayed pressed against the rifle, her face pale, lips parted, breath shallow. Her body trembled, fingers twitching against the trigger guard. For a terrifying moment she looked like she might not move again. Mira grabbed her shoulder. "Aria! Hey, stay with me!" She eased her onto her side. Blood trickled faintly from Aria's nose, crimson against the dust. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then steadied with sheer will. Rourke's glare faltered. He had wanted her broken, exposed. Instead he saw a woman who had bent physics itself and nearly broken her own body to do it. His jaw clenched, words stuck in his throat. Mira pressed a rag to her nose, whispering fiercely, "You can't keep this up. That breathing isn't meant for more than 1 or 2 tries. You'll black out, you'll bleed out." Aria wiped the blood away with the back of her glove, her hand trembling, then pushed herself upright. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The steel plate still rang in the distance. The crowd had fallen silent again. This wasn't just respect now. It was fear. Fear of what she was capable of, and fear of what it cost her to achieve it. Rourke barked at the range crew, his voice harsher than before, as though trying to claw back control. "Reset the targets, push her further." But no one moved right away. The spell of awe held them frozen. Pierce finally stepped forward, voice sharp. "That's enough for today." But the damage was already done. Every man and woman watching knew the truth. Aria Volk had just crossed into the impossible, and she had paid for it in blood. Mira helped her back to her feet, slipping the notebook into Aria's case. She caught a glimpse of the old photograph tucked inside. Aria with her grandfather, both smiling, the crimson rifle between them. Mira felt her throat tighten. The rifle wasn't paint. It was legacy, vow, and burden all in one. Aria steadied herself, crimson weapon in hand. The crowd parted silently as she walked past, her steps unsteady, but her gaze unbroken. The legend had shifted. She was no longer the soldier mocked for vanity. She was the sniper who bent the wind and nearly broke herself doing it. The valley was still buzzing with whispers about the impossible shot when a runner burst through the crowd, headset clamped crooked to his ear, face chalk white. He shoved a tablet into Captain Pierce's hands, voice shaking. "Priority feed, command channel." The screen glared red with a single header. Guardian team compromised North Ridge. Extraction window, 90 minutes. Pierce's face tightened. He turned instinctively toward Rourke, who had already snatched the tablet, eyes raking across the report. His knuckles whitened as he scrolled. Mira caught only fragments over his shoulder. Guardian pinned, comms cut by Spectre 12's jammers, enemy convoy preparing to cross the border. If they weren't extracted before the clock hit 0, Guardian would vanish into enemy hands, or worse. The murmurs swelled. Soldiers traded uneasy glances, their adrenaline from the range trial evaporating into dread. This wasn't training anymore, this was blood. Rourke slammed the tablet against his thigh, hard enough to make a crack. His voice was thunder. "Contain this, no chatter, eyes forward." But Director Yates, who had been lurking near the periphery of the range all day, finally stepped into the open. His pressed uniform was immaculate, his face unreadable. "Containment won't save them, Admiral. Guardian needs overwatch. Without GPS, without sensors, the only way they get out alive is if someone carves them a path." His gaze slid deliberately toward Aria. "And we just saw who can." The crowd stiffened, heads turning in unison. Pierce shook his head. "She's exhausted. You saw her nearly collapse." Mira's hand pressed against Aria's shoulder, feeling the faint tremor still running through her muscles. "She'll bleed herself dry if you push her again." But Rourke said nothing. His eyes were locked on Aria, narrowed, calculating. Then something slipped from her case. In the scramble of the last trial, the flap had torn loose. A faded photograph slid free, landing in the dust. Mira bent to pick it up, and froze. It was Aria, years younger, standing beside a tall young man in uniform. Same sharp eyes, same Volk jawline. A handwritten note scrawled at the bottom, Liam, Guardian. Mira's throat tightened. She whispered, "Guardian team, Aria, your brother..." Aria snatched the photo back, tucking it inside her notebook. But her silence was broken now, voice raw, rough. Where are they? Yates didn't hesitate. North Ridge. 90 minutes until Spectre 12 moves them across the border. The words hit like a rifle shot. Rourke still held the tablet, his lips pressed into a hard line. You want Overwatch? He looked at Aria, his voice cutting. Then here's your chance. Save them, but if you fail, this base dies with you. Mira gripped Aria's arm, whispering fiercely, He's baiting you, you're barely standing. Aria didn't look at her. She was already strapping the Barrett sling over her shoulder, locking the bipod into place. Her breathing steadied, the tremor in her hands fading into focus. She stepped to the line again, facing not targets, but the storm-torn horizon. The soldiers parted without a word, their silence carrying more weight than any order. Rourke lifted his chin. Guardian has 90 minutes. You'll give them a way out, or you'll be buried with them. The crowd bristled at his coldness, but none dared speak. Mira swallowed hard. You can't do this alone. You'll need me calling wind. You'll need every second. Aria glanced once at her spotter, eyes blazing. It wasn't a request, it was command. Together they turned toward the storm beyond the ridge. The countdown had begun. The desert beyond North Ridge was a maelstrom of dust and broken wind. Guardian Team's last transmission had cut mid-sentence. Now only static bled through the comms. Every eye in Fob Kestrel locked on the makeshift command feed, a red timer counting down from 90 minutes, each second a hammer. Aria Volk lay prone at the forward observation post. Crimson Barrett dug into the dirt. Mira Cho crouched beside her with nothing but a hand-drawn chart of gusts and mirage patterns. No drones, no sensors, just sight and instinct. Spectre 12's jamming screamed across the airwaves. The radar feed blinked in and out, wind meters useless. Captain Pierce's voice crackled in the command tent. You've got 6 lanes of fire between Guardian and the extraction zone. Carve them open, buy them 60 minutes. Aria adjusted her cheek weld, eyes narrowing through the scope. 6 doors, she whispered, almost to herself. 1 for each step home. Mira nodded, scribbling fast. First lane, North Berm, 900 meters. Dust curl right to left. Hold 1 mil into the gust. The Barrett thundered. A tracer round streaked through the storm, carving a line of fire visible even in the haze. It smacked into the berm, sparking bright. Through the static, Guardian's comm crackled for a second. We see it! Moving! Cheers erupted behind the observation line, quickly smothered into tense silence. Aria cycled the bolt. Mira already had the second lane mapped. 1200, cross shear. You'll have to aim into dead air. Aria inhaled, her chest freezing, then exhaled long. She squeezed. The bullet vanished into the storm, then rang steel dead center on a half-buried target. Guardian's icon blinked closer to the safe zone. The third lane was trickier. A rusting vehicle wreck sat at 1,400 meters. Enemy fighters dug in around it. Kincaid, grudgingly ordered to assist, dropped prone beside Aria, his rifle spitting suppressive fire. Dust plumed as insurgents ducked. Aria lined up on the wreck's undercarriage, shifted half-mil low and fired. The rounds skipped under the frame, ricocheting upward into the machine gun mount. Sparks flew. The enemy position collapsed. Mira's eyes widened. You just turned physics into a partner. Aria's nose bled again, crimson against the rifle's sling, but her hands never wavered. Fourth lane, 1600. Wind screamed so loud it drowned even the Barrett's thunder. Mira shouted over it. Skip shot off the ridgestone, trust it. Aria locked onto a jagged outcrop, squeezed, and the bullet ricocheted into a hidden sniper's perch. The body toppled, rifle clattering down the slope. Guardian's path opened another 100 meters. The fifth lane was the worst, 1,800 meters, a valley choke point mined with obstacles. Mira called the wind, but the flags tore themselves into rags. The air was madness. Aria closed her eyes, just for a second. She remembered her grandfather's voice. The rifle is not power, it's responsibility. She opened them again, tunneled into the scope, and let the chaos settle into rhythm. The Barrett roared. A dull boom shook the valley. Her round had detonated a buried IED, clearing the choke in one fiery breath. Guardian's faint comms returned for a heartbeat. Lane 5 clear. We're through. Soldiers behind them were shouting now, unable to contain the awe. Even Pierce's knuckles whitened on the radio handset as he barked for updates. The 6th lane was the kill shot. A truck convoy idled at 2 kilometers, engines revving, ready to carry Guardian's captors across the border. Spectre 12's counter-sniper watched from high ground, waiting for any exposure. Mira's pencil snapped. 2,000 flat, crosswind sheer, one chance. Aria inhaled. The Aurora cadence burned her chest, veins pulsing, vision tunneling. She aimed not at the lead truck's windshield, but at the dust swirl 10 meters ahead. Her finger tightened. The Barrett cracked. For a moment the storm swallowed the bullet whole. Then the lead truck's engine block exploded in flame. Shrapnel tore the second vehicle's tires. The convoy screeched to a halt. Guardian's signal burst clear for the first time in half an hour. We have the exit. Moving now. The fob erupted. Soldiers pounded helmets, shouting, their disbelief turning to raw relief. Pierce sagged against the map table, whispering, she bought them a way out. Rourke stood apart, arms crossed, face granite. But even he couldn't mask the flicker of awe in his eyes. On the ridge, Aria lowered the Barrett slowly, her breath ragged. Her nose bled freely now, staining her glove as she wiped it. Mira pressed a hand to her shoulder, eyes fierce. That's 6 doors, you've given them home. Aria's gaze never left the storm. Her body trembled, but her voice was steady. Not yet. Guardians not safe until they're inside. Behind them, the countdown clock ticked on. 50 minutes remained, and somewhere in the dust, Spectre 12 still hunted. The convoy still burned on the ridge, smoke rising like a black flag into the storm. Guardian was on the move, stumbling through the lanes Aria had carved with blood and breath. But Mira stiffened suddenly, eyes locked on the shimmer of glass far above the convoy line. Counter-sniper, she whispered. Aria followed her pointing finger, scanning the ridgeline at 2.2 kilometers. A faint flash betrayed the enemy's scope. Then the crack came, delayed, distant but lethal. Dirt erupted just meters from Guardian's rear man, forcing the team to dive for cover. Mira's pencil flew across her pad. 2.2 clicks, high perch, wind cross-cutting both layers. He's not just firing blind, he's reading you. Another crack. A Guardian soldier cried out, hit in the shoulder. Their advance froze. If the sniper pinned them here, the extraction clock would run out. Captain Pierce's voice roared through the comm feed, raw and desperate. Volk, take him down! Aria slid the Barrett into place, scope steady, but her breath caught in her chest. The Aurora cadence had drained her, her lungs burned, her arms trembled under the weight of the rifle. Beside her, another figure dropped prone. Captain Mason Kincaid, who had sneered all morning, set his own scope on the ridge. You can't make the shot alone, he growled. He's reading your rhythm. I'll break it. Aria didn't look at him. Her voice was ragged but calm. Suppress. I'll finish. Kincaid nodded once, lips pressed tight. He fired. His rounds hammered the ridge, forcing the enemy sniper to shift. Dust kicked up, obscuring his perch for seconds at a time. Aria inhaled, vision tunneling. Mira called corrections over the wind. Hold 2 mils right, half low. Wait for the gust dip. Now! The Barrett thundered. The shot sailed, vanishing into the storm. The return crack came a second later. Too high. Miss. Mira's voice sharpened. He's anticipating you. He's matching cadence. Aria clenched her teeth, eyes blurring. Kincaid cursed and slammed another round downrange, drawing fire his way. A bullet snapped against the rocks inches from his head. He spat dirt, muttering, he wants you, not me. Aria shifted again, forcing herself into the Aurora pattern one more time. Blood welled fresh from her nose. Mira's voice broke, desperate. Aria, stop, you'll black out! But the crimson rifle was already locked. Aria steadied her scope on the glint of the enemy's lens. Her breath froze, chest screaming for air. She exhaled, long and trembling, and pressed the trigger. The Barrett roared, a long silence. Then a spark flared on the ridge. The glass flash vanished. A body tumbled, rifle clattering down the rocks. The counter-sniper was gone. Guardian's channel burst to life with shouts of relief. "We're moving! Lane clear!" Kincaid exhaled hard, rolling onto his back, chest heaving. He glanced at Aria, who lay pale against her rifle, eyes half-lidded. For once, his voice wasn't mocking. It was raw. "You did it. Hell, you actually did it." Mira caught Aria's shoulder, easing her upright. Blood streaked her face, her gloves, the crimson sling, but her eyes opened, steady as steel. She rasped, "Not done yet." Rourke's voice cut in from the fob, low and grim. "Guardian is 80 meters from extraction. Spectre -12 will throw everything they have at that corridor. If she fails now, they're gone." Aria adjusted the Barrett one last time. Her arms trembled violently, but Mira braced the bipod, her hands steadying Aria's. Kincaid rolled back beside them, sighting down his scope. "We'll cover the approach. You take the kill shot." The storm howled, the countdown bled into its final minutes. Aria's breathing slowed, defying her breaking body. Mira's voice trembled but never faltered. "One last door, Aria. Open it." Aria's finger tightened. The shot cracked, ripping into the storm. The storm clawed at the valley as Guardians staggered toward the final corridor. Mira's voice crackled in Aria's ear, brittle with urgency. "Convoy incoming. 2 trucks armored. They'll cut Guardian off before the extraction zone. You've got 1 shot." Through the haze, Aria saw them, engines revving, headlights slicing the dust, and beyond, the faint silhouette of Liam, dragging one of his wounded men. Her brother, alive but seconds from being erased, her body was failing. Every breath scraped her throat raw. Her vision blurred at the edges. Blood dripped freely from her nose. Kincaid's hand pressed against her shoulder. "Volk, you can't! You'll kill yourself." She didn't answer. She slid the crimson Barrett forward, aligning the bipod on fractured rock. Mira scribbled furiously, her pencil shaking. 2.3 clicks, cross-shear gust, skip the dust pocket, aim low, trust the bounce. Aria's hands trembled as she adjusted. The storm felt alive, laughing at precision. She inhaled once, shallow, again deeper, then locked her chest, forcing silence inside her lungs. "Every shot is a door," her grandfather's words echoed, and this one was for Liam. She exhaled. The trigger broke. The Barrett roared, recoil hammering her bruised shoulder. The bullet vanished into the storm. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then the lead truck erupted in fire, its tire shredded, its axle snapping sideways. The second vehicle swerved, colliding hard. The convoy collapsed into chaos. Guardians surged through the smoke, sprinting the last stretch. Liam looked up, just for a moment, toward the ridge. He couldn't see her face, couldn't hear her voice. But he knew. He always knew. The comms burst alive. "Guardian clear. Extraction achieved." Cheers erupted across Fob Kestrel. Soldiers pounded helmets against the berm, shouts rising into the storm. Even Pierce's voice cracked with relief. "They're safe. You did it." Aria sagged forward, the crimson rifle slipping from her hands. Mira caught her, pulling her back from the dirt. Her face was ghost pale, her eyes half closed, but a faint smile traced her lips. Hours later, when the dust finally settled, the base lined its corridor in silence. 2 ranks of soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, boots together, helmets tucked under arms. As Aria walked between them, crimson rifle against her chest, every man and woman raised their hands in salute. This wasn't applause, it was reverence. Rourke stood at the far end, his face harder than stone. For a long moment he simply stared. Then, for the first time, he saluted, not with his left, not with mockery, but with his right hand rigid and true. "I was wrong," he said, voice carrying through the hall. "Not about rules, but about people. You reminded me." Aria inclined her head, too weary for triumph. Rules mean nothing without responsibility. Director Yates stepped from the shadows, his smile thin. "The demonstration was everything I needed. Proof Aurora isn't dead." Rourke's eyes cut toward him, cold, not another word. "You'll bury this. She doesn't need your spotlight, she needs protection." It was the twist no one expected. The same admiral who had mocked her was now her shield, determined to keep the machine from turning her into a poster. Kincaid approached, hesitant, voice rough. Volk, I misjudged you. Hell, we all did. He offered a notebook she hadn't realized had slipped from her case. This belongs to you. She took it, fingers brushing the faded photo inside. Liam's face stared back, smiling. Later that night, when the base returned to its rhythm, Lieutenant Harrow began typing his field notes. He titled the file with the words that had started it all, "Hands off my rifle," because what began as humiliation had ended as legend. They mocked her crimson rifle. They tried to rip it from her hands. They bet her entire career on 6 impossible shots. But when the storm came and Guardians' lives hung on a thread, it wasn't rank, rules, or reputation that carved the way out. It was her. 6 doors opened in fire and dust, a final round that stopped a convoy, and a silence so heavy an admiral himself had to salute. This is what a simple woman means. Not decoration, not vanity, responsibility. Every shot, a door for someone else. If this story left you stunned, don't let it be the last one you hear. Smash that subscribe button right now, ring the bell, and join the community that brings you the stories the world tried to erase. And I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What does responsibility mean to you? Weakness, or the most powerful weapon a person can carry? Don't click away yet. The next story is already waiting on screen, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. This is a simple woman, and the fight to rewrite history has only just begun.